and we wanted to seek your guidance and your input before we take a position on this issue. Dr. Dow, let's get started.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So as I noted in my email, Secretary Rai has been asked to speak on behalf of the higher education community at the October 24th Maryland State Board of Education board meeting. This is about college and career readiness standards. I know it was a long presentation, so I won't ask anybody if you've watched the whole thing. What I thought might be helpful at this point is let me just walk you through some of the highlights that I think are worth noting so that we all kind of have baseline information. So some presentation highlights. One, let me share my screen just so that you can see some of these slides. AIR did a content analysis between high school courses and the college courses in English and math, the first credit bearing and developmental. The highlight here is that there is content alignment. What they are teaching in high school is well aligned what is needed to know for background information, either in the developmental courses or what is needed to know to be successful in the credit bearing courses. So content-wise, there's alignment. There are a few places where there's some missing gaps, but by and large, we're teaching what students need to know to be successful content-wise in credit bearing courses. So this is highlighted in these slides, slide 78 and 79 of the PowerPoint slides. And then everything before that provides very detailed analysis on how they did that course alignment and that analysis. What AIR was trying to do is a predictive validity study on current measures of college and career readiness. So they looked at 4 different models. So slide 96 provides a summary of those models. So the interim college and career readiness standard, which right now uses the PARC, the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program, the MCAP, as well as SAT scores. So those are the current interim college and career readiness standards. So they first wanted to just figure out if the interim standards demonstrate are good signals that a student is college ready. Then they looked at model 2 and model 3, where they looked at additional scores and additional quantifiers for college readiness. So to skip ahead, what they found is that these models have different variability and inclusiveness of students being accurately defined as college ready as measured by credits earned and successful completion in college level coursework. What's interesting, the big takeaway here is that this inclusion of high school GPA demonstrates a more inclusive measure, an accurate measure of students being deemed college ready. So AIR provided a number of recommendations to consider for the board regarding college and career readiness standards. So one is to revise the standards to include GPA and at least a 3.0 GPA. So this would be in addition to the SAT, the MCAP, I don't know the shorthand for that, and the PARC exam. An additional recommendation is to strengthen the learning opportunities and supports for content mastery, along with counseling early in students' educational journeys. So including early on warning signals to say, listen, this student is not necessarily on track, which is consistent with the blueprint and what the blueprint is trying to do. And so therefore, measuring this at grade 10 allows the high schools then in turn to provide supports in grades 11 and 12 so that by the time the student is graduating high school, they are college ready per these standards. They also talk about integrating skills for success. They noted, as you all might remember, AIR convened focus groups. Post-secondary stakeholders noted that these standardized tests and a high school GPA don't necessarily demonstrate all of the skills needed to be successful. So things like critical thinking, self-direction, being able to show up on time, those are important skills. And so AIR recognized that and said that it's important that those skills also be incorporated some way, somehow into these readiness standards. And then provide clear guidance on how the standards should and should not be used. So being very clear to the public and to teachers and to systems, particularly our LEAs, on what this means and how it should be used as a tool. So at this point, the question at hand, so we've got kind of 3 discussion questions that I'd like to open up to the group. One, is there general support for using high school GPA as an indicator of college readiness? 2, are there any reservations with the proposed models? So one distinction is they used a 3.0 GPA cutoff and a 2.75 GPA cutoff. So that gets a little into the weeds of what the cutoff scores would be. And any recommendations for the secretary to mention in terms of next steps or other models that the state board should be considering in terms of determining college readiness. So I will stop there. I know I kind of fumbled through it. Thank you for bearing with me. It's Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. I'm happy to answer questions, but just open it up for discussion. And really, this is gathering information for the secretary so that he can make a presentation on behalf of the higher education community.
Just Dr. Dow, before we give time to Monica, just to clarify, AIR was recruited through MSTE to do this analysis, and they have periodically provided MHAC updates on their work. And I'm assuming that each segment has heard about it. This is not that you are hearing for the first time, because I've been asking presidents in different meetings and forums, and they have been hearing about it too. Anyway, Monica, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I couldn't find my microphone button. Thank you all for today. It was, in general, I thought this was a very thorough report, and it provides us as a state with, I think, wonderful opportunities moving forward. In terms of your question, Emily, Dr. Dow, about the high school GPA, it validates so much of the literature over the years about how strong high school GPA can be when it comes to college success. So absolutely. And using that as part of our multiple measures, that's something that we've done at community colleges. Definitely want to continue to do that. In terms of any differentiation between on the cutoff between 3.0 and 2.75, what have you, I would say, I mean, I think that's something that to consider. I don't know if it's a consideration we should do depending on the academic subject, maybe. I don't know. Kind of like what Dr. Willis was talking about, how they use 3.0 for English and 3.0 for math and 2.7 for English, what have you. I mean, that's something maybe we should investigate. I don't know if there should be that type of differentiation when we're looking at high school GPA. And that's all I have at this point. Thanks.
Nancy, go for it.
Thank you. So I actually agree with Monica. I think she said a lot of what I was going to say. I think that using GPA is absolutely a important and useful and viable thing to do. However, I also want to remind people that USM has made SAT optional for many of our institutions. And the idea of triangulating multiple measures is really important. So I have two comments. One, because the AIR was predictive, using measures that we won't be able to use necessarily moving forward, I think it's very, very important that we rely on MLDS or ask MLDS and pay for this study to follow up with the students who have earned, if it's 3.0, I think we need a trial period. A 3.0 GPA, let's see how they do in the college credit bearing courses. 2.7, let's see how they do in the college credit bearing. We have sort of an opportunity for a natural experimental study, quasi-experimental study. And I think we should really, really take advantage of that. And also to correlate it with the MCAT, the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment. Again, that hasn't necessarily been validated in any way. PARC was validated, but we're using the PARC assessments. So I think the reason that we're all feeling a little uncertain is that there's no anchor. And we can't make a big decision like this with no real evidence. So I would say we're in a transition period, useful information, but we shouldn't make final decisions. I mean, we have to make decisions, but we have to think of them as a learning. We're in a learning mode. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Matt.
So I agree with a lot of what Nancy said, and then I just want to clarify what the recommendation is that we're being asked to make, right? So between the 2.75 and the 3.0, it's not one or the other. It's either the standard-based and 3.0 or the inclusive CCR and 2.75. Is that the decision point that we're being asked, or are we being asked just for broader feedback on the models of okay. Yeah.
So my understanding is, thank you, it's a great question. My understanding is AIR at this last meeting in September presented some initial considerations for the board to think about in terms of how to incorporate high school GPA as part of a decision factor for college readiness. They provide a number of different if-then models to say, is it an if-then? And how, so for example, you could just lump it in. If a student has a high school GPA of 3.0 by the end of 10th grade, they're college ready. We're calling it. You could adopt the model where they don't meet the standardized test scores. So they're just below the SAT, just below the PARC or the MCAT. Let's look at their high school GPA. Okay, high school GPA indicates that they're ready despite not meeting the threshold. Another model is incorporating actually AP scores and other kind of metrics and tools to determine college readiness in conjunction with high school GPA. So the AIR offers some recommendations. Yeah. The board will consider additional recommendations at the October meeting and potentially even to the November meeting. The December meeting is their cutoff to make a decision as to what the new CCR standards will be. So it is a very broad, yes, is higher ed generally in support of these multiple measure models, multiple pathways to college readiness determinations, inclusive of high school GPA. That is the question at hand. And then ultimately being able to get into the weeds.
Super helpful. Thank you. And I'll again echo Nancy's thing. I agree. I think obviously this is very promising. It's work that we support, but it should be revisited continually as we get more data back down the road, to Nancy's point. Thank you.
Great. Allison?
Thanks. This has been a great conversation. We have to make this a sort of tested out phase. I am deeply worried that we are going to track students, that we're going to go back to you're not college ready, and here you are at 16, tough luck. We'll not accept that. We know what that does. That's very much, whether we want to say it's socioeconomic, it's race-based. And we cannot live with that. And so we need to be able to get this into play and say, this is not working. Again, really supportive of multiple measures. We used it a lot in California for developmental math, and when we moved away from developmental math, to place students in supportive co-requisite courses. And math GPA is actually an amazing indicator, but it's not the first 2 years math GPA. There's a reason we look most closely at the junior year, sophomore, junior, senior year. People screw up when they're young, that young. And to say someone screwed up as a freshman and now here they are, they're finally getting it together as a sophomore, but oops, you got a 2.5 because you were so bad in that freshman year. That's not acceptable. So I understand we have to figure out how to deal with this on a large scale, and everybody wants a number, but we have to figure out how to take care of those students who make mistakes. And it's not SATs, it's not ACTs. Those are not good measures. And I don't know this other test, I'm sorry. But we have to pressure them to say that we are going to evaluate this. And if we've made a mistake, we're going to fix it. We're not going to say, oops, it doesn't work, but we're stuck with it forever. We cannot have that. And it's just, they should have been asking for advice from higher education a hell of a lot sooner, and they didn't. And so be it. We'll give them our advice now, and we hope they will listen to us. That telling a student you're not college ready at the age of 16 is a horrendous message. Maybe you're not college ready, but what are we going to do then to support you to get college ready? Because not everybody needs to, there's good work opportunities for folks, but everyone should be college ready. And then if you choose to go into a workforce ready career, that's okay. But we should never dismiss anybody's opportunity to be college ready.
Thank you. So my understanding, and for those of you who have been tracking this, there are some limitations in all of this. The blueprint has required MSDE to make this decision by December. So they don't really have a choice in this. They have to make a decision by law. They have been fair. I think they've been fairly inclusive of higher ed at this point. There were lots of focus groups. They evaluated course content. There have been opportunities for more conversations, but they haven't necessarily tossed us off to the side necessarily. My understanding of Blueprint is the purpose of doing this at the point of 10th grade, Allison, to your point, is to make sure that there are supports in place in 11th and 12th grade to make sure then the student is college ready by the time they graduate. Why this has to happen in December is because the LEAs will take this information and revise their implementation plans to figure out what are those supports that we're going to give students in 11th and 12th grade? And are those supports aligned with local community colleges, the public 4 years when appropriate? What is it? Is it dual enrollment? Is it providing the remedial classes in 11th grade so that students can get caught up and figure it out so that they are college ready? What does that look like? So that's part of the so it will take a minute for everything to kind of roll out, but this is the start of figuring out those supports in 11th and 12th grade so that students, by the time they graduate, they are college ready. Everybody graduating high school is college ready. That is my understanding of why. And so it's not that they are getting directed into a non-college pathway. They are given the supports to be successful and be ready for college and career by the end of 12th grade. That's my understanding of how this is all supposed to work. Candace.
To that point, Emily, it would just be nice nomenclature-wise if this were like the preliminary indicator of college readiness, if there were just some kind of thing there, because that would point out that, somebody might have been on a good path in 10th grade and then fell by the wayside, and I'm particularly concerned again about STEM, yeah, it's the math. I mean, we're struggling with our own USM admissions policy, but we require Algebra 2. It is set up for the old college readiness standard. And so, we're just trying to figure out how to make sure we're aligned, and so, we drop that. I mean, don't, this is not for the state board, but I mean, it's something we're seriously wrestling with because we don't want to discourage students at a critical point from course selection that would allow them more choices later. And we are getting requests, from the districts now for certain remedial courses to be used within high school. And how does that fit into the picture? There are good and bad parts of that. We kind of want them to just focus on good high school math courses targeted to teaching adolescents. Anyway, the other thing that concerns me related to math is that the AIR study didn't really disaggregate the performance of students who took Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 by 10th grade. Those are very different students. And so I would just echo everybody else's comments that I think we have to treat this as kind of a trial, because to me, that is a big difference in students.
Madly taking notes.
Yeah, so certainly, some really, really good suggestions, good points here. Whatever we do, I think one of the recommendations that on behalf of all of you, I'll say that whatever we do, we assess it for the first 3 years very closely and try to adjust. That's important. Secondly, for full disclosure, I have been involved with this conversation for the last 10 years or so. And first at Montgomery College, we did that, AccuPlacer. I'm a mathematician. I did my doctorate in mathematics and I studied AccuPlacer in depth. I don't think it measures anything, right? But, we will give that test to students and they won't know what are the consequences of that test. Unprepared, they will go and take it, and that will determine their path. And we know that many students will be placed in developmental classes, and maybe 10% will get out and complete an associate or higher degree from that. So the ROI was not there, but we didn't have anything else. So first we tried the Algebra 2 at Montgomery College as a pilot. Algebra 2 for math, if you got A and B, then you can be placed in college level liberal art math class. And for English, we tried world history and a couple of other courses. If you had A and B, you could go to college level English. And they were not good predictors. We found out that students who had A or B in Algebra 2, they weren't doing as well in college level math. So then we brought together a statewide group. Dr. Dow would know I was chairing the chief academic officers group at that time. And that group was really awesome. They really did some wonderful work. And we went to 3.0 GPA. Now with 3.0 GPA at community colleges, I don't have, Monica, the data in my head for all colleges. But by and large, and especially for my institution at that time, we saw that more students were placing in college level math, and more of them were attempting college level math in the first year, and more of them were passing. And especially our African American students and our Latino students, they started outperforming their peers who were coming through AccuPlacer. So it was just amazing. So we don't have data statewide, but Monica, you could help us with the community college data. And certainly we can have data from other states. I hate to compare directly Florida with Maryland and a lot of other things. Why I bought into 3.0 as a mathematician at that time, because Maryland was requiring math and English in all 4 years of high school. So that brought me to the table. Second thing, I think Candace or someone else raised that other issue about STEM programs. So I do want to keep this prerequisite issue separate from college readiness issue. If you are going to be an engineer, you have to take calculus. So for calculus, there are prerequisites. You must have those prerequisites. And an institution can say, hey, you are coming in calculus class, you must have a B in pre-calculus or something. So those could be institutional decisions. I think that's fine.
Okay.
Make sure that the other thing is that in all these things, when we did it at a community college level, we had regular conversation with our faculty in math and English. And we were also following data that, okay, you passed math, college level math, and college level English. Well, you took next psychology class. How are you doing in your psychology class? Are you able to write or not? So we were looking at performance in other courses where these courses were prerequisites. It's not just, more of them are passing college level math, so we are okay. Then other thing is that some other academic innovations that help us, and I think Nancy is here, she would know more about all this, co-requisite classes. You're taking statistics college level, hey, you didn't do very well in algebra or something, right? So what? Algebra is taught in the context of statistics. When you're learning statistics, hey, these are 5 concepts from algebra that you need to know. Let's learn that and see how they are used in statistics. That's also a Statway model that's also quite successful. And Nancy had a major grant statewide, and there is some lot of good data there also that we can rely on. But I think, from the point of view of higher education being inclusive and accessible. See, accessibility also means accessibility of our curriculum. All these prerequisites, we make it very difficult for, a large number for student population, so for college to be accessible, right? So again, I think what I will say that this is an idea worth trying, but let's follow very carefully and make sure you are having conversation with faculty. They shouldn't be surprised with all that.
I think one concern, and I've said this in other meetings that I have about these standards, is I don't want MSDE to adopt a standard that isn't aligned with higher ed. To the degree that a student is deemed college ready in 10th grade and they move along and they do things, and then they go and enroll at one of our universities, and the university says, oh, no, you're not college ready. You need to do something different. So that is, I just want to make sure we are aligned, and this is our opportunity to say, yeah, no, we have concerns about these scores or these tools. Certainly, AccuPlacer has, the community colleges have moved away from using AccuPlacer, even though that continues to be an MSDE metric. But nonetheless, here we are in determining what makes sense for students moving forward. So, Secretary, hopefully you've gotten some good insight. Any other comments from the group as we think about his remarks for the board? Allison.
Yeah, first off, I appreciate you getting us together, even though we're a challenging bunch, I'm sure, and getting our input, because this is what's key here, is we're going as higher education in Maryland, not 1 or 2 voices. So I appreciate that. And before we end, I want to share our thoughts are with you, Phyllis, and our colleagues at Morgan State. I hope you're doing okay. Again, it's such a horrible plague in our society. And, even though we're not all sort of barraging you with emails, we're thinking about how you're doing.
I'll make a quick statement is that I do appreciate, I have heard from some of you. I appreciate that we are in your thoughts. It has been a very surprising and distressing event for many of our students, faculty, and ourselves as I've been there 17 years. I've never seen anything like this. I never expected anything like this. So we were in the emergency meeting right before this to decide, like, what do we do next and how do we move forward? So yeah, just keep us in your thoughts and prayers, and we appreciate hearing from you. Thanks.
And Dr. Keys,
Thank you.
also know that we are all here to support you.
Great. Thank you so much, Secretary Rye.
So I think that between now and my testimony is towards the end of this month. You will have other ideas. Make sure you send it to Dr. Dow. I don't want to just speak about what I think on this issue. I have a pretty strong opinion based on what I have seen and my personal background, at least in mathematics. But I want to present higher education's viewpoint on this. So very inclusive, let's present it. And, we fundamentally agree with the objective of making our curriculum accessible and being more inclusive. And at the same time, caution, monitoring the data and looking at data for the next 3 years. I know that MLDS will be helpful, but each institution has a strong IR department. When we did this study, they were extremely helpful. They still talk to me. So I think, their data it can be very helpful too. And we make data-driven decisions. Think about this. I speak for acupuncture at community colleges in Maryland. For 20 years, we knew it wasn't working. Data was there. And we kept ignoring the data. And we don't want to do that with this either, right? Let's look at the data. If something needs to be corrected, hey, we are open to that. But we speak with one voice, and higher education comes together in helping students. And we'll continue our communication lines open.
Secretary, if I can ask the group, is there any value? MSDE offered to have AIR come back to you all and present just to us, to our higher ed community. Is there any value in doing that? And you don't have to answer now, but know that that was offered. The presentation from last week is lengthy, but it is pretty comprehensive, and it's worth the watch. Monica and I were just chatting that it took both of us 2 segments to watch it all, but it is pretty detailed. But that's either way. MSDE has offered to present themselves, come back to you all. It does sound like, based on the conversation from last board meeting, there may be a potential for additional town halls in much more public settings, but they've offered kind of for just higher ed to come back to you all and present. So happy to coordinate that if you think that that would be helpful in the coming weeks. And you don't have to tell me that now. But. And then, of course, if, as Secretary Rice said, if you think of things that we need to be conscious of, things that you would like for Secretary Rye to be thinking about as we prepare his remarks, please let us know so that we can include them.
And my request from all of you is make sure that this conversation is beyond your administration. Make sure that faculty, department chairs, deans are aware of this, and many of them are professionally active. So they know these conversations are going on nationally in conferences in other places. But I think, many faculty wouldn't know who AIR is, what is Blueprint, why this is being done, and all that. And I think a good communication from our side could be very helpful. And if AIR wants to do town halls, things like that, let's take advantage of that. Why not?
Matt?
Sure. I'm not trying to get anybody into more meetings, but, given that this has sort of been slightly contentious dating back to January when we first started having meetings and such, and given the new leadership changes it might be advantageous to us to take the opportunity to perhaps convene the entities and the new interim superintendent and AIR and ourselves to sort of do a little bit of meet and greet and discuss this issue and express our thanks for moving in a better direction than it was many months ago.
I think the new interim superintendent is supposed to start maybe just a week before this upcoming board meeting, if I do the math right. But we can work to see what we can schedule to the extent that there's availability. That makes sense. Okay, on that front, we'll move on. There were just two more agenda items, simply because we knew we had your attention today. The NSF grant for institutions to apply, we wanted to just nudge that and make sure that that got circulated and see if there were any questions or any interest. Anything for the good of the group on that one?
Yeah, just to be precise, there are two National Science Foundation grants. One is STEM, Scholarship in STEM. The RFP comes out, I believe, twice in the year. And the other, and that provides a scholarship, full tuition to low-income students. This is tied to the income level. And it comes with national best practices. And the second is IU's, Improvements in Undergraduate Science Education. That's also RFP, I believe it comes twice in the year. This is, National Science Foundation, hefty grants available to support the students and also bring best STEM education practices at our campuses. Many of our institutions have submitted and succeeded in past. I want all of us to submit, and certainly, you have to go to the ballpark to win, right? I want every institution to look at what's happening in STEM education across the country. I know Morgan State had a pretty strong STEM program. I know several community colleges have a strong STEM program. I know UMBC has a very strong IU's program and maybe STEM also. So among your peer institutions, there's a lot of knowledge and expertise. I'm sure if you call them, they will come running to help you. Montgomery College just got a $2.5 million STEM grant. The dean there is wonderful, Dr. Nawal Ben-Muna. She will kill me, but reach out to her. She'll be very, very happy to help. We want those conversations, right? Our topics of conversations have to change. Although, the current topics, we'll continue with them too. We're not abandoning them. But I think these are other topics that are also part of this should also become part of our vocabulary. So again, I know Allison USM system has brought some additional expertise to help smaller campuses. I think that's a brilliant, brilliant idea. And each institution should see how we can create capacity in that area. It doesn't require too much. I think, some support and encouragement to faculty is what is needed, and some accounting help and other things. So reach out to colleges that have received these grants in the last 2 years. And I want to make sure, I want to go to NSF director. I'm going to have a meeting with him, a coffee at some point, to tell him that, look, every institution in Maryland has applied for these 2 grants. So thank you very much.
And we'll make sure we circulate that information out to everyone again, and you have that regularly available. Thank you, Candace. Applications due in mid-January and mid-July. Okay, and the last item is completion goal, 55% completion goal. As many of you know, we have the 55% completion goal that by 2025, at least 55% of Marylanders will have an associate's degree. 2025 is right around the corner. We will likely not meet that goal for lots of different reasons, but one of those reasons is not because the colleges are not producing. You all are doing a great job in graduating students. There are lots of other factors that contribute to why the state may not be reaching that goal. Nonetheless, knowing that 2025 is around the corner, we want to start thinking about new goals and what we should be working towards for attainment, whether those are certainly equity-based goals, but whether or not we talk about a percentage, a raw number, annual targets, So Secretary Rye has started some initial conversations, as you heard in our last segmental meeting and in some of the recent commission meetings. So Secretary Rye, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think you're looking to hear what others would like to maybe consider for new attainment goals in the coming years.
I think certainly we have to think about new attainment goal. Let me first say on 55%, our institutions of higher education have outperformed. They have produced, so in 2013, a prediction was made that if higher education can produce X number of graduates, we will reach that goal. In spite of enrollment decline, higher education produce X plus Y. They produce more. But still, we are not going to reach that goal. So, and we have learned something from that about goal setting. And then, but what is alarming there is that the gap between our white and Asian population and Black and Latino population is huge. So that is something we need to think carefully. But looking at 2025, 2030, what are our challenges? Changes in our demography, changes in our economy, what goals we should set. Should it be, 500,000 credentials of economic value every year? And students get to those credentials with no debt. Other states are doing those types of things. So we should step back a little bit, not what our goals should be, how should we set those goals? How do we bring everyone at the table, higher education, K through 12, business community, government, everything, and how do we set up that goal? Lumina Foundation and others have helped other states. This is an expensive proposal, time and effort, and we are in conversation with them and others, how they can provide us some resources in getting there. So I want all of you to think about that a little bit, what those goals should be, given from where you sit in the state, from your vantage point. But more importantly, how we should do this in a most collaborative and data-informed method. So we all seek your guidance and help, and we'll be talking about this now at every meeting. So this will be part of our vocabulary as well.
Any immediate feedback on that? Setting some goals. Okay. Well, we will keep it as an agenda item for you all to take back to your stakeholder groups and start to collect information and consider ways that we can develop these goals and figure out what the new goals would be. Is there anything else, any other business? Okay, we will start to inquire about getting a meeting on the calendar with particularly new leadership that'll be coming into MSDE. That may or may not happen before the board meeting, but certainly we can make it happen sooner rather than later. And then if you have any other thoughts about these college readiness standards, please let me know so that we can incorporate them and make sure Secretary Rye is truly speaking from one voice for higher ed. Great. Thank you, everyone. Give you
Thanks
back
for bringing us
13 minutes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dr. Rye. All right, everyone.